Hello, and welcome back to Buggleskelly Station. So a few months ago, I teased that I'd be doing the Pico Challenge, and it's been a busy summer, and the deadline is a month away, as I'm filming this today, just at the end of August. So I haven't got long, and I thought I'd show you the progress at the minute. It's, this. So, yeah, I built this, as I say, about probably 3 months ago. This is as far as I've got so far. I've done a bit of design work, but in terms of construction, yeah, not a lot. So the size of this is about 75 centimetres in length, 30 centimetres wide. So about a foot by 2.5 foot in old money. So just to put that into context, I do have a few scale options. So with O gauge, I could do probably a couple of sidings or something. In double O, could do a bit more. My friend James Weston Sigelman has done a very nice diorama in double O, so check out his channel for that. N gauge, could do quite a lot really with N gauge, but I've decided for some reason to go with T gauge. I don't know why. So I've never modelled in T gauge before. It's the smallest scale that you can get working trains. Now, but for this challenge, Pico said it's a diorama, and they even specified they don't need to be working. So you can get commercially available T gauge track. I did buy some just to see what it was like. It's very chunky. That's the problem, when you go so small, you can't get the details. So what I'm going to do with this is 3D print all of my own track and try and do something spectacularly scenic on a very small scale. I've decided to set the diorama in the Highlands of Scotland. I lived in Scotland for a while. I absolutely love the country, and I took this photo of Glencoe on our honeymoon a few years ago, so I'd like to replicate something close to this if I can. The first thing I needed to do was check the scaling of the track, because I want the diorama to be a correct scale gauge ratio, in the same way that TT120 is correct and double O gauge isn't. So for this, I used the handy calculator on my own website, buggleskellystation.com. I worked out similar measurements for sleepers and sleeper spacing, and then I put some track together in Tinkercad. As I'm 3D printing the track, I've created raised sections to keep it all at one level, and I've printed the track sections to the maximum size that my printers can manage. I then designed viaducts at the same height as the raised track bed, and I resin printed all the sections. So the basic plan is to have track going across sort of in an S shape, some sort of river through here, and mountains. Now there is a limit, 14 centimetres is the height. Pico say you can't go above that, so it's not very big, but in T gauge that's quite a hill really. If I can get these the right way around, I believe that goes something like that. Yeah. Sort of an S shape, so it's just a slight curve. To build up the edges, I've got this 2mm ply, which is quite flexible. But the reason I got this is I can cut it with I don't need to use a jigsaw, I can just cut it with a sharp blade. And that will basically box around the outside up to that maximum 14 centimetre height. And I'm going to have this part will be a tunnel, so I need to design and print a tunnel mouth to go there. And then the good folks at True to Scale have created for me T gauge ballast, which is basically dust in a few different colours and some snow as well and ground cover. So yeah, that'll be an experiment to see how to put this down, because I don't know whether traditional ballasting methods will work on this track, just to show you how fine this is. I've had to raise it up slightly to be able to even see it, but there is a slight ballast shoulder. If you can see the profile there, there is a slight shoulder, so it should look effective. I'll do some tests on that. And then I've got universal ground cover, and I've got a few different colours and things to use, and my trusted IKEA packaging. This is the stuff you should never throw away. And we've recently moved, had some wardrobes and new bits of furniture, so there's plenty of this stuff. And what I've done is I've designed the track bed to be around the height of that. And just to show you, this is the commercial track. It's hard to tell in that. I'll show you against that. Just how high the rail is, because it has to be, because you're running tiny little wheels on it, and the wheels are, I've got some of these as well just to try. They are microscopic. But that's the reason. Obviously it's hard enough running trains in like 009 or N scale, but T gauge must be crazy. So this is what I'm thinking. I've just got a silver paint by Vallejo. Could have just used a silver pen, but I can't actually find it. Gosh, very old brush, because this paint ruins these brushes. Because all I want is that bit of shine. Just on the top of the rails. Hopefully. Yeah, I think that's worked. I need to work out how far back this should go, because I want to have enough space to get foreground, because this will be the centerpiece, and I'm probably more likely to take photos and videos and stuff from the front. So if I set this a bit further back, lots of space in the foreground to have the river and whatever coming through. I want the diorama to be light enough to move around, but strong enough to survive a few knocks in transit. I've decided to add 2mm plywood around the edge, which I've braced with 1cm strip wood. The plywood is thin enough that I can cut it with a sharp blade. So I've just used this 1cm strip wood to reinforce those ply ends, and this cutout there means that I should be able to photograph through. So I have to make sure this is lined up with enough gap at the back for this piece to fit down the side. It's lined up. So just to make sure that that dries in the right position, I'm going to cover the seam with that. It leaves just about 2mm at the front to do this front one here. tunnel needs to be added before I can go any further with the landforming. So I've 3D printed this tunnel mouth, and I decided to print the interior too, as it'll be visible in any photos taken from inside the tunnel. I 3D print in resin, which for this took about 3 hours. And then that needed to be washed in isopropyl alcohol and cured under UV light. So I think it'll be a lot easier to paint these when they're not on the diorama. For these I'm just using Humbrol paints. I either use Humbrol or Vallejo, but I know that these colours work, so I'll start in with light grey matte. So I'll set that aside. So these are started brown because we spray painted the top for the sleepers. Could have masked it off, but there's no point really.
As a homage to the celebration of 80 years.
It's about a real place that he had created and all these events and things that have happened.
So now that that's dry, I can start to apply a few colours. I'm going to water these down a bit so they're almost like a wash. What I've got is, they're all Humbrol. It's a US light green, brick red, sand and dark grey. So I'm just taking a bit of light grey. What that's going to do is just catch the edge of the stones. So the very awesome people at True to Scale have actually made me some T-gauge ballast when they found out about this diorama, which is it's basically dust, but it is there. It's very fine granules, and they sent a Lanarkshire red and standard grey because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to go with in terms of the track colour. I've been looking at so many photos of Highland railways and they all differ so much. I do like the red, but I feel like it's sort of too orangey, really, for what I had in mind. So what I've done is I've mixed up this little batch, which is basically the two together, and I think just literally just dusted some on there. I think that looks about right. There's a better contrast there with the sleeper colours, and obviously it'll get toned down a bit. But yeah, I think I'm going to go with that. Now, I'm not really sure about how to ballast with this stuff because it's so fine, but I think I'm going to try the traditional method, putting the ballast on, tapping it to keep it off the sleepers. God, it's going to be really difficult. One thing I didn't consider with ballasting was that the 3D printed track left nowhere for the glue to run. So instead of with a traditional baseboard, it might go into the cork underlay or the wood, it had nowhere to go on the plastic. So I had to resort to dabbing up some of the excess glue with some paper towel. To build up the structure of the mountains, I used IKEA cardboard packaging and then just scrunched up brown paper, or you could use newspaper, on top, all held down with masking tape. See, I've moved on to using this brown tape instead because the masking tape is absolutely crap. What brand is it? Oh yeah, that makes sense. I'm not going right up to the edge of the viaduct or the bridge because I think I'm going to do all that with Daz clay so I can get a bit more control over it. Now the mountains were taking shape, I could see a flaw in my plan with the riverbed, and the 1 centimetre strip of wood at the back would need to go. Otherwise, I'd need to add a waterfall at the river, and I actually wanted the water to flow in the opposite direction. So normally at this stage I would cover everything with sculptor mould, which is a sort of plaster in Paris and paper mix. But I am a bit cautious about getting plaster onto these bits that I've already painted, and the fact it's so messy, I know I'd get it all over the track. So what I've bought is a pack of DAS or DAS, I'm not sure how you pronounce it. This is air drying clay, which I've used for things like puddles before. Obviously just dries sort of in a few hours, but what I'm going to do is try and do the finer details, so the stuff right up to the track and everything up to this in the clay, and then I can kind of mould the shape of the riverbed, and I can put in, I want to put a road along here and there's a small bridge to go over as well. This ruined castle or church or whatever it's supposed to be was designed by Jack the Tinkerer and is available on thingiverse.com for free. I've just scaled it down to T-gauge. So while that's drying, before I can move on to the sculpture mould, I need to put some rock faces in. Now, I wonder if these pieces are going to end up being just too big, really. Just comparing it to the church or whatever this was here, obviously that's a big old rock face. And I've got a few pieces that basically I did a load at once for another project, so I might just have to snap a few bits off and make some smaller rocks, I think. Now the best thing I've found for sticking this in place is this grab adhesive, which is probably dried up. I haven't used it for a while. It's starting to come out now. There we go. So I'm just going to instead put some on the back of the rock. So now I've put the rock faces more or less where I want them, really. They are stuck in. Obviously this is still only paper. This is still only parcel tape under here, so it's not very secure yet. So 24 hours later and the clay is nice and dry, so it means we can move on to the sculptor mould. Which is a plaster of Paris and paper mix, basically, and it's really messy, so I'm probably not going to be able to touch the camera while I do this. That's all done now. It's already starting to go hard. So sculptor mould will take probably a good 24 hours. So it's been a few days and the sculptor mould is now completely dry. So I need to cover all of this with a base coat. I'm going to go with burnt umber with a little bit of burnt sienna. No one cook umber and sienna properly, they always burn it. Sitting here watching paint dry reminds me of my Patreon, where you too can see exciting scenes like this before they reach YouTube. I shared photos of the finished diorama with my patrons before anyone else, and there's lots of other perks as well in exchange for supporting the channel. Thanks to all my patrons for making this video possible, and if you'd like to join us, there's a link in the video description. To paint the rocks, I used the same sand, brick red, dark grey and green that I used on the stonework earlier. I've added neat Mod Podge to all of the exposed brown paint, and then I scattered onto that some true to scale universal ground cover. I found this dry stone wall for free on thingiverse.com. So thank you to Mike's Railway for designing it, originally in HO, which I've scaled down to T gauge. So now I've got the base ground scatter on the diorama, and it leaves me with a bit of a problem because I need to move on to static grass next. But there's not a lot of static grass that would be realistically feasible for this scale. Just to sort of demonstrate something, I've designed and 3D printed a transit van. So yeah, so that's probably about 6 foot tall, a transit van, and you can see that's probably there 4 millimeters high. So most of the static grass that I use for 00 gauge or even M gauge dioramas will be 4 to 6 mil. This sort of stuff here, which again is probably too small to focus on, but that would engulf a a transit van. So what I've had to do is look for 1 to 2 mil for longer grass and 0.5 mil for sort of normal scale grass. So here's what I've found. So I'll just put my little transit van there. It's broken down as well because it's a transit van. So this is the ground texture basically. That's universal ground cover by True to Scale, and it's very, very fine. It's sort of sand-like texture, which means it's fine for T gauge. And what I bought back at Model World Live when I had this ridiculous idea was these from War World Scenics, which are 1 mil grass. So I'm just trying to translate that. 1 mil is probably about a foot, just over a foot long, which is fine for sort of longer grass in the Scottish Highlands. So I've got an autumn colour and I've got a dead grass colour, so they'll be good. And I also found at Model World Live the Grassmasters. That's 0.5 mil. So I mean, that is ridiculously short. That's the shortest grass I could find, but that would probably be good for grass along the roadsides, maybe, that might be a bit better kept or that's been eaten by animals. I'm not sure about the colour though. I mean, it'll probably work. It'll be a mixture of all of them. And I was at the Oxrail show yesterday as I'm filming this, the Oxford group's show, and I was next door to Model Railway Bits. So shout out to Ian at Model Railway Bits. He had these 1 to 2 mil scorched grass and all dry seasons. I then added a little bit of pinky red scatter, which is made by Tom's Modelling Corner, and various textures by True to Scale to create the sort of riverside beachy area. Their 00 gauge ballast works quite well as fallen rocks. I chose to model quite a barren landscape so that I wouldn't have to handle trees in T-gauge, but there are some areas that will be protected from the wind, such as the bottom of the mountains and around the bridge, so I've added a few trees and bushes just using underbrush, which is a Woodland Scenics product. I then added a bit of texture to the trees by sprinkling them with leaves by Tremendous. I already ballasted the track section under the bridge earlier because that needed to be done before the bridge could be put in place, but now it was time to ballast the whole track. I used the same method as before, just adding the loose ballast, spraying with isopropyl alcohol and then dropping on the scenic cement over the top and hoping nothing would float away. When I first decided to try T-gauge, I spent a few days designing some locos and rolling stock, going down the diesel route, designed lots of open wagons and a brake van. I even designed a little model of Boko, who ended up coming on holiday with me this summer. But when it came down to it, I didn't think it suited the Scottish diorama in the end, so what I did was I went onto Thingiverse and I found this model. This tiny little ScotRail Class 158 was designed by Alex Honsmerk. Alex designed this logo to fit a working T-gauge chassis, but as I didn't need mine to be motorised, I designed my own chassis to fit. I designed and printed this tiny little broken down transit van, which I then painted and made to look suitably rusty. I think my announcement of T-gauge must have got a few people excited in the model railway world, because my friend Chris at Model U,
that's me,
yeah that's him, sent over a T-gauge 1:450 scale model of me, which when it arrived I was pretty amazed how tiny it was and a bit scared, but somehow managed to paint me up, and I am now on the diorama looking at my broken transit van. The river is really simple. It's just a base layer of Humbrol gloss coat, which takes a couple of hours to dry. I then brushed on some Mod Podge gloss to create ripples, blowing at the glue through a straw. When dry, I dry brushed some white paint onto the glue, and then I covered it all with a final coat of Humbrol gloss coat. The last stage was to drop some black wash onto the trees and the ballast to dull it all down, and then I painted the sides of the diorama with matte black paint. So just over 2 weeks later, the diorama was complete. I'd stupidly suggested taking it down to the Rapido Rail-X in Kent, which forced me to complete it in record time, but it went down really well. I've decided to call it Glen Shangan, which translates as Ant Valley in Gaelic.
What is this?
A center for ants!
Well, thanks for watching. It's starting to get a bit windy here in Lincolnshire, sorry Scotland, so I'm going to head back. But yeah, I really appreciate you watching. If you've enjoyed it, please like the video, share and subscribe, it always helps. And if you want to help with videos in the future, consider becoming a Patreon. They get to see things before YouTube and a few behind the scenes bits as well. But I really appreciate it. This is probably going to blow away now, so I'm going to pack it up. But thanks for watching and see you again soon. Bye.